But I always really, I love watching you teach, and it gives me so much, a sense of such satisfaction. It just feels it's really exhilarating, and seeing, and I think that, you referred to at the beginning of like, is a whole lesson, did it work, as opposed to just a research lesson. But one of the things that I really was reminded of in terms of when you have a class where you have all these different formats, you were in the huddle and you were in one group you came in with and you were in a different group later, and is that it builds relationships between students that I think become really valuable when you go on the other days when you have a little more traditional, like, let's do the book, let's do these problems. Like, I think that those flexible groupings and being comfortable with, like, now we're all here, now we're there, now we're gonna be over there with different people. I just felt like there was this like bonding, that unspoken bonding that kind of happened, that of just a comfort sitting together and talking and engaging with each other with a different group than it was 20 minutes ago. You just kind of let people throw out their ideas but left it there, versus at the end where you tried to pull things together more. I think I like that because I felt like it wasn't really driven in the beginning, and then you sort of just let people show out different ways, didn't say if anyone's way was right or wrong, but got them to this place of these three, the big groups, where then when they sat down to better analyze one of the three groups, they didn't have a direction you hadn't told them what direction to go in. So it allowed them to, the group I was looking at was the Maria, Sarah, Angela, Alex group, and they started with expression. So it allowed them to like kind of come at it with a blank slate, but yet have some things they had heard being said earlier. And what was neat about Maria is she really liked when people contradicted. She accepted when people contradicted. So she would say, I think these are like terms and unlike terms. And then someone would say, well, what about, there was one so she kind of, I liked it because there was some contradiction in there, and then she sort of liked to accept. She was the one who finally threw out the y equals 2, because people were like, that's an equation, it has an equal sign, it has to be an equation. And she was like, well, but yeah, it has an equal sign, but I think it's really different. And she sort of made it okay to not have an answer, that the discussion was really their thing.
Know that when you're teaching and you're giving kids opportunities to talk, that they are surfacing all these conceptions and misconceptions and partially formed ones, and that's really important for their putting all these ideas together. And that, if we're not giving those opportunities in lessons, and we're just saying do this and then do this and then do this, and assuming that they'll learn kind of they'll have a coherent understanding of math in the end, I think is because they still have these questions.
Thank you, Jake. It was really wonderful watching you teach. It really is Alice said exhilarating, I think. But I'd say I just feel great pride watching you teach, sort of being a colleague of yours and just another teacher, and watching what marvelous things you do with the kids, and what things kind of happen in the classroom when you're up in front. I was especially watching this group of Srikar and Maya and Noah, although I watched some other groups too. To your point or your question about whether or not you were teaching them what to focus on as opposed to just finding out what it is that they were focusing on. Were you leading them too much, or were you sort of were you able to mine and find out what it is they knew about this already and were figuring out for themselves? I think it was a perfectly good balance. I mean, I think I was afraid going in that there would be more kids kind of saying, I don't know what to do, or I don't know, or focusing on things that trivial things would dominate as much as what we would think is more substantial and more important mathematical distinctions. And some of those came up. I mean, at one point they said, well, yeah, this has all A's and this one doesn't. But for the most part, I thought that there were disagreements that were substantial. Like they were especially doing the inequalities. That's the first one they focused on. And once they had to trying to break the inequalities into their subgroups. Noah said, well, these are all greater than and these are all less than. And then you happen to come along then and you asked, he said, but why is that an important distinction, or what makes that important? But overall, I thought they stuck with it, especially for 95 minutes of confronting these, and the variety of groupings that helped with that. But still, there was basically the same kind of questions that they were being asked to tackle for a long period of time, and they stuck with it.